Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Rabotai. We're going to continue our series of great Moroccan Sfarim and Rabbanim. And here, I wanted to discuss a Chacham that we have spoken about in the past, but I just wanted to add on some details about this Chacham because it's also going to give us a perspective on the system of the Beit Din and how the Beit Din used to work and the changes in the Beit Din, and you'll understand a little bit how Beit Din works nowadays also. The system, how it worked in the Yahadut Morocco for hundreds and hundreds of years, was that there was a main Beit Din of 3 Dayanim, and a Beit Din has to have 3 Dayanim, but there were many little cities and many little different villages that weren't able to have, for one reason or another, 3 Dayanim. So instead, they had 1 Dayan that was sent. Now, there's a big question in the Gemara in Masechet Sanhedrin if 1 Dayan is enough or not. You need 3 Dayanim. The Gemara brings from several different sources that you would need 3 Dayanim. So, that was the system, and we'll see in a moment why that was the system, that we used to have always. There was 3 Dayanim, and sometimes there was 1 Dayan in the cities. Now, in the year 1918, there was a big change in the system of the protocol of how the Batei Dinim worked. Already, I think, starting 1912, 1913, the French the French government came into Morocco and basically took control. And it seems to be for most Rabbanim, the way they were writing, they were very happy with such a change because some of them write, their streets got cleaner and their medical services became better. And they also fixed the Beit Din system in a way that there was more of a how would call it. It was much more official. Dayanim got paid from the government, and there was a protocol, and that protocol demanded also that a chief rabbi should be appointed. So the capital at the time was the city of Rabat, and the governing official was the marshal, who was called. They had their eye on Rabbi Rafael Ankawa. Rabbi Rafael Ankawa was from the city of Saleh, which is adjacent to Rabat, and he was a tremendous scholar. Besides being a personal figure that was very revered, he was independently wealthy, so he didn't have to come on to anybody's favors. He was very proficient in all of the halachot, especially in Choshen Mishpat. He has a sfarim called Pa'amonei Zahav that are basically a staple to anybody learning Choshen Mishpat. Somebody told me that one of the great Edut HaMizrach Rabbanim in Yerushalayim says that the way to learn Choshen Mishpat is with Shulchan Aruch and Pa'amonei Zahav. He has tremendous influence, and Rabbi Rafael Ankawa was appointed to be the chief rabbi. He refused. He says, I cannot, as long as there's another Chacham called Rabbi Shelomo ibn Danan, as long as he's from the city of Fez, and he's a great Gaon. He also has great lineage. His grandparents, great-grandparents, for generations of being Rabbanim. I cannot accept this position. So you understand, in those days, how it used to work. Nowadays, there's people fighting with lobbying and all types of political influences to try to become chief rabbi, and there's always who's going to be. I want to be. In those days, it was the opposite. You're going to find some documents that doesn't have any signature on them, because each one, Rabbi Rafael and Rabbi Shlomo ibn Danan, refused to sign before the other signed. They refused to sign. So, I'm not going to go first. He's greater than me. No, I'm not going to go first. He's greater than me. So Rabbi Rafael and Kawa eventually prevailed, and he convinced Rabbi Shlomo ibn Danan that he is not becoming chief rabbi rather he's giving it over to Rabbi Shelomo ibn Danan. That's indeed what happened. Rabbi Shelomo ibn Danan was the chief rabbi of Morocco, the first chief rabbi officially that started with the French with the French rule in 1918, and that's where he resided. He was in the city of Rabat. He left the city of Fez and he was in the city of Rabat. Now at the time he wrote already a sefer called Asher li Shlomo. It was recently reprinted in a beautiful print, and he has many different teshuvot that are fundamental to halacha. I was recently by the Chacham Rabbi Shlomo Dayan in Yerushalayim, and he told me that Gaon Rav Ovadia Yosef Zecher Tzadik Livracha, when he would look over the Asher li Shlomo, he would be amazed, and he expressed his amazement at the depth and the importance of the sefer. Asher li Shlomo was not only that; it was also a staple for Dayanim. Actually used it and quoted it tremendously. It was a cornerstone of psak. So either way, Rabbi Shlomo ibn Danan became the Dayan. Now, I spoke about him in the past just to mention that he became an orphan at a young age, and there's a story once that his mother got upset at him and hit him with a stick. And, she got upset at him, so he was so distraught. He went to his father's kever in Fez, the Bet HaKvarot in Fez. He started praying to his father's kever, and when he came back the next morning, it seems to be that his father came to his mother in a dream and said, "Don't hit our son. He is going to be a great tzaddik and a great rav," and the mother comes to Rabbi Shlomo and then he says, "Did you go somewhere yesterday?" And he explained to her that he went to the kever and the father came in a dream. Either way, that's when he was very young. From a young age already, he was not only versed in Chokhmat HaNigle, also Chokhmat HaNistar. This is his children writing this whole Hakdama in the beginning of the sefer Bikesh Shelomo, which is the second sefer that I wanted to introduce you, the sefer Bikesh Shelomo, which has not been newly reprinted, like in a new print, but it's not bad. It is out in print. And this Rabbi Shlomo ibn Danan, from a young age already, he was known as a lion. He was known as one of the great lamdanim in all of Morocco, to a point that they appointed him to be chief rabbi. It was like he was on the bedin, but the av bedin at the time in the city of Fez was Rabbi Vidal Tzarfati. Also, we would speak about him in a great time. He was the Rav Vidal Tzarfati III. There was two more before him. Their family were direct descendants of Rabbeinu Tam and Rashi. They were Tzarfati, was the same last name. They came according to the Art Scroll book of early Acharonim, sometime in the 14 or 1500. They came from France to the city of Fez. This was the Tzarfati family, and this was the line of the Tzarfati family. Rav Vidal Tzarfati was the Av Bedin at the time. Rabbi Shlomo ibn Danan became the chief rabbi in Morocco, but eventually Rav Vidal Tzarfati around 1922 or 1923 was niftar, Tafresh Peg Bet, Tafresh Peg Gimel, and there was a void left in the city of Fez. At that time, Rabbi Shlomo ibn Danan had a dream. He had a dream that he saw that there was this bird that was flying away, and he was distraught at the dream. He thought it meant that he's going to pass away and go back to his go to the next world. So he told his dream over to his friend Rabbi Falen Kawa. He told him, "No, it means that you're going to rise to Gdula, that I know that you want to, back in your city, your hometown city of Fez." And indeed, that's what happened. He was asked to come back to the city of Fez, and he requested permission from the French government not to be the chief rabbi of Morocco in order to be able to go back to the city of Fez, serve as the Av Bedin, which was a very, very prominent Betin, probably the most prominent in Morocco at the time. And they acceded to his request. That's when Rabbi Falen Kawa became subsequently the chief rabbi. Rabbi Shlomo ibn Danan came back, and he was done. He on this Bedin, I have the zichut right now of going through the manuscripts of the Bedin of the 1920s. There was a shift from Rav Vidal Tzarfati to Rabbi Shlomo ibn Danan. He was a very, very dominant force. He in the way he was posek his questions. Sometimes you'll find 8 pages on one psak din. It just goes on and on and on. And it's his bikiyut is unbelievable. So either way, about this question about Dan Yechidi, he has in Siman Lam Tet in Bikesh in Bikesh Shelomo, and he writes unapologetically and categorically that so to the questionnaire says, you made a judgment and you didn't have three people there. How could you not have three people there? He says you should know. The minhag in Morocco for generations upon generations was over here that even one dayan is enough to be done. He says in all areas, kitin, kiddushin, everything else. And he says even though the Shulchan Aruch writes three, this was a minhag, not like the Shulchan Aruch. He writes explicitly. Doesn't try to answer and say, maybe we're talking about it's a mumche over here, and a yachid mumche you would be allowed. He says this was our minhag for generations upon generations, and you're in Siman Lametet. And he and he goes on. That's one of the cornerstones that's quoted about this subject. The Bikesh Shelomo Siman Lametet. He also he discusses fundamental psakim in regards to the laws of Yerusha that there was at the time. In Morocco, the way that it worked was that the woman would get half. And she would agree, or she gets her ketubah, or she gets half of whatever assets the husband has, whatever it's less. It's called has to do with something called the takanat habechira. That was the custom. Women had many strong rights from the beginning. That wasn't something that the Rabbanim requested. They made it a takana that was enforced. That was the structure and that was the fabric. It's not like the man had a choice. They protected women's rights for hundreds of years. In Morocco, that it already came from Spain, from the Girush Sfarad, from the Takanat Chachme Tolitulia, which is Toledo, in the Radan and the Tur, I think Siman Resh Kuf Yutet. So these are some of the important details of the of how the Beit Din worked. It worked that they also didn't have the rights right away. They started having rights also dealing with monetary laws, but then those rights for some reason, I don't have clarity why, were taken away, and they were only authorized according to the power of the French government, and which is effective till today. By the way, there's a Beit Din in Casablanca that has that government power to deal with all types of laws that have to do with ishut, which is marriage, divorce, yibum, anything that has to do with Yerusha, anything that has to do with inheritance, and appointing an apotropos, which is appointing somebody in charge of the property of the yitomim, of the orphans. That was all part and parcel of the system of the Beit Din in Morocco till today. Till today, they have those powers. Even when the power came back to the Moroccans and not to the French, they kept that in place. But Dinei Mamonot, they didn't have that same power. I mean, they still dawned on, but it wasn't that same power. So that's either way a brief look at the system of the Batei Dinim and of Rabbi Shlomo ben Danan. Chazaku Baruch.